Find the words to our opening song, Acheinu, this prayer on your programs for tonight. Please join me. Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, Acheinu, Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, hanetunim batzara, batzara ubashivia, haomdim bein bayam uvein bayabasha. One more time. Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, hanetunim batzara, batzara ubashivia, haomdim bein bayam uvein bayam. Hamakom, Hamakom Yerachem, Yerachem Aleihem, Meyotziem Mitzara, Mirvacha, Umayavel Aleora, Umeshibon Ligeula Shta, Magala Uvizman Karim. Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, Acheinu kol beit Yisrael, hanetunim batzara, batzara ubashivia, haomdim bein bayam uvein bayabasha. Continuing on page 142 with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem. Boachem leshalom, malachei ashalom, malachei elyon. Mimelech malachei amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni leshalom, malachei ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitkhem, Tzeitkhem leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So many of you asked, how was your trip? And to myself and to Rabbi Brown, and I'm sure to the other rabbis in the community who went, and we're going to talk about it tonight. I don't know how to answer that question. And we'll try later, but the answer that we'll give later is about what we learned from the trip and why we went. But how was it? I honestly don't know. I don't know how to answer that because it wasn't a normal trip to Israel. It wasn't the kind of experience where you go to sample the hummus, to see the sights, to spend all of your money in the shops, to see family, to see friends. And we did almost none of those things at all. And at the same time, it was the kind of experience that leaves you profoundly changed, just as you hope every Israel experience will do. So I can say to you that Israel has changed dramatically since the last time that I was there, and certainly since October 6th. And I can say that we were changed dramatically by that trip as well, and by Israel. So in the sense that you go away to come back different, it was a good trip. We went away and we came back different. And by the way, that's the same reason that we come to synagogue. My rabbi, Rabbi Gerald Raskin of Sholom, used to teach us that if you go to synagogue and you leave the same person you were when you came in, then you haven't really been to synagogue. So we'll talk about Israel in a bit, but let's just talk about Shabbat for a moment. If we enter into the synagogue on the Sabbath and we leave as the same we were, then we haven't really been to synagogue on Shabbat. So I invite you to be changed in this moment. Mason's going to go from a boy to a man before our eyes. But we can all be changed. We can all be transformed and allow ourselves the freedom to experience and to immerse ourselves in this moment, in this place, and come out different, profoundly different, profoundly changed. And Mason, I want to say one other thing. We would still be there if it wasn't for your bar mitzvah. We talked about this. We're like, Cantor Cohen was here. Thank God there were no crises or tragedies in the community. I understand that sadly there was one death, but not in our congregation. So maybe we should go away longer. I don't know, nobody died. But if there hadn't been a bar mitzvah, we probably would have stayed for Shabbos in Israel. But we came back, Mason, for you. And we are, and probably our families who needed us back too. But we are so excited. This is a generational bar mitzvah in our congregation. The Coblins have been part of this congregation almost since the very beginning. And we are just so excited to celebrate with all of you, with your whole extended family. I know Mason has been looking forward to this day for a very long time. Every Shabbos morning, he's up there ready to throw the candy. And now, Mason, tomorrow we get to throw it and rain sweetness upon you. So we want to invite Gada and Sandy to come up and to do a reading and then the lighting of the Shabbos candles. The reading is right here in the middle.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us.
As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Get the lights sorted. We got this. Oh. So we turn to our Kabbalat Shabbat service. series of psalms culminating in Lecha Dodi that help us transition from the week into Shabbat, that help us make that shift into being open to change and transformation that Shabbat can offer. We start on page 130, and there's going to be a lot of yalalais, so please sing along. We encourage you to participate. Lechu neranena l'Adonai Maria letzur ishenu nekadma fanav betodah bizmirot naria lo yala layla yala layla yala layla yala layla yala layla. Try it with me. Yala layla yala layla yala. One more time. Yala layla yala layla yala layla yala. Page 131, Psalm 96. Shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai, kol haaretz, shiru l'Adonai, baruchu shemo, basru miyom leyom yeshuato, sapru bagoyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim nifleotav ki gadol Adonai umhulal meod norau al kol Elohim ay yalay lalay yalay lalay yalay lalay yalay top of 134. Sing Zamru l'Adonai, sing praise to Adonai. Zameru l'Adonai vechinor, vechinor vekol zimra. Zameru l'Adonai vechinor, vechinor vekol zimra. Zameru, zamru Adonai, zameru, zamru l'Adonai, zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra, zameru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra. Turn now to Lecha Dodi, page 138. Welcoming in the Sabbath bride. And when we get to that last verse, we'll rise and face the entrance to welcome her in. O Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. O Lecha Dodi likrat kala, Pnei Shabbat nekavela. Shamo זמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור המלאכה. מראש מקדם משוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 3. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך הפכה. רב לך שבט במגבחה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
Face the door to greet the Sabbath bride.
בואי ושלום, עטרת מעלה, גם בשמחה ובתולה. תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. Facing front, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
We can remain standing. We'll turn to page 263. Got you there. Turn to page 263 as we continue with Chatzi Kaddish. And as we do, we invite Mason. I can just see the expression on his face. We invite Mason to, to join us on the bima to lead the rest of our service. Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם עולם מימיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה. שמי קודשא בריחו לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן.
Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai Amborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed.
Please be seated. Continue on page 265 as Mason leads us in Ma'ariv Aravim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher ma'ariu ma'ariv aravim. B'chochma poteach sha'arim udvidvuna meshane etim umchelef et hazmanim umseder et hakovachim b'mishmerotehem barakir kitzono. Bareyo valayla, gole or mipnei choshe, vechoshe mipnei or, umavir umavi laila, umvadil bein yom vein laila, Adonai tzefot shemo, El chai vekayam, tamid yimlach aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai ha'mariv aravim. Amen. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amchavta, Torah umitzvot, chukim umipashtim, otanu limdadecha, al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shachbeinu uvkumeinu, nasiach kechukecha. Nelisach devrei Toratecha uva mitzvotecha leolam leolam va'ed ki hem hecheinu ve'orei chemeinu yonahat neget yomam v'layla Ve'acha al tzir mi'emu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha Ve'b'chol avcha Uv'kol nashvecha Uv'kol meodecha Ve'hayu hadbarim ha'ela Asher Elohim etzavecha Hayom al levanecha Veshilatam levanecha v'dibarta ba'am v'shivata b'dadecha uvlecha v'derech u'shochbeha uv'kumecha u'shartam leot al yadecha v'hayu latotafo b'neinecha u'chtaftam al memuzo beitecha u'visharecha Liman tiskeru vasitem bekom utzivotai v'yem kirushim Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher otzeitchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lehem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Continue with Mi Chamocha, page 270.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh.
Hello. Wait, stop.
Nora tehilot osef ele, Nora tehilot osef ele, Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze lianu ve'amru, Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, Leolam va'ed b'nemar. Kifad Adonai et Yaakov, u'ge'alo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. V'hamidenu shomreinu lechaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
On page 272, we'll join together in Vishamru.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. Yam barai dai dai, Shabbat Shabbat, yam barai dai dai, Shabbat Shabbat, yam barai dai dai, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ים ברי די די, שבת שבת, ים ברי די די, שבת שבת, ים ברי די די, שבת שבת, שבת שבת shalom.
So as we rise now for the Amidah, beginning on 273, I invite Mason to come back to help lead this part of the service.
Adonai sfatai tiftach, Adonai sfatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha, ufi yagid tehilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Ve'elohei Avatenu V'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Ve'elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rahel Ve'elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'hanurah Elyon Gomer Chasedi Tovin V'konech hakol V'zocher chasadei avot v'imahot U'mivin l'bnei leman shemo be'ahava U'melech u'mashiach u'mashiach u'magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Zara Atah gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayei maitim Rav LaRav le'oshia Mashiv ha'varucham Merid ha'gashem Mechalkel chayim bechesed Mechayei meitim be'rachamim rabim Somech noflim be'rofeh cholim U'matir asurim U'mechayeh amuroto lishanei afar Michamocha b'gevur u'midomelach Melech b'mid u'mechayeh u'matzbi Yeshua Man atah hayot meitim Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hameitim
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. Yasher Koach, Mason. Well done. We'll see you again a little later in the service. And for now, we're going to continue with the next part of the tefillah on page 279, Ritzeh.
Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu le'amecha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ava tekabel u'tehilel ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael Amecha El Karov Lechol Korav Penei El Avadecha V'choneinu Shefoch Ruchacha Aleinu V'techezin Eineinu B'shuvecha leTzion Berachamim Baruch atah Adonai Amachazir Shechinato leTzion
One of the really special things about this short trip that we took was that we were there during Hanukkah. And it was really very poignant to hear over and over again, whether in the second blessing when you light the Chanukiah or the Haneru Talalu, like all the songs for Hanukkah, they keep coming back to this idea of a nes, of a miracle that happened long ago. But of course, Bayamim Hahem Uvazman Hazeh, that in those times and in these times as well. And there was an incredible place in Tel Aviv, you've probably seen pictures or videos of, it's called Kikar Chatufim, the hostage square. It's where all of the families come and gather. There was a beautiful menorah lighting that we attended. I don't remember which day it was one day. And but in the square, there are these just incredible art installations. And there were a few that were special for Hanukkah, and there was one in particular, it was just on the ground, and it said, Nes Gadol Yehiyeh Po. So instead of the dreidel phrase that a great miracle happened there, or here, as it is in Israel, it's a great miracle will happen here. And this kind of whole imagery of the miracle and the hope that comes with the idea of miracles was very, very strongly felt during Hanukkah. And you heard it every time we sang one of those classic Hanukkah songs or lit the candles, that real just desire that we might have a miracle, that we might have hope, in particular, to bring those who are in Gaza home. So we'll join together in this prayer, this blessing, also giving thanks for the miracles that we have experienced and those yet to be. It's on the bottom of 284 lines from the bottom, V'al nisecha.
V'al nisecha shebechol yom erev avoker besorayim me'olam kivinu lach me'olam kivinu lach hatov ki lo chalu rachamecha ve'hamrachem ki lo tamo chasadecha me'olam kivinu lach me'olam kivinu lach.
A prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, page 282.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. Shalom rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה לשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם.
Take a few moments now for silent prayer.
All of our prayers that we say with our mouths and in our hearts. We say, Yihu l'ratzon, may they be acceptable, may they find space in the world, may they come true. Yihu l'ratzon, imrefi, imrefi, le'egyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, vegoali, vegoali.
Invite everyone to turn to page 371. In the middle of the page, in a moment, we'll join in a Mishaberach for healing. We think of so many in our lives who are struggling with health, physical health, mental health, that they all, we pray, might find wholeness and healing. In particular, the Shabbat, we are thinking of Shannon Wall, Ginny Bloom, Reuven Pinchas Ben Zara, Chana Bat Brunia, Yosef Ben Michael Miriam, Howard Eckersley, Marilyn Perrin, Adele, Bruce Howitt, Jason Stanley Fox, Virginia Edwards, Nini Rostaker Shipman, Mayor Leb Ben Yosef, Yeshayahu, Natalie Wormelli, Mayor Tzvi, Mayor Zalman Ben Rachel, Daniel Gottesman, Bill Shaw, Claire Columbia, Carla Zivit, Janet Gelb, David Shlomo Gorney, and Andrea Yarsbiak. If there are other people you're thinking of in your life, if you'd like to stand and mention their names, I invite you to do so.
Yisheberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. I come down here. So first, a few announcements this evening. Has anybody signed up to do announcements? I didn't look. I don't think so. Okay. If you were, anybody want to do the announcements? Okay. So a reminder that this Sunday at 2 o'clock, well, first of all, I'll say that this Sunday, tomorrow's Mason's Bar Mitzvah. Sunday morning is our last day of religious school before the winter break. I hope you'll join us for that if you're a religious school student or a family. And then this Sunday at 2 o'clock is a rally, as we do every Sunday at 2 o'clock at the Art Gallery. The theme for this weekend is to bring them home. The hostages, of course, to keep them present in mind and present in our community as well. That's at 2 o'clock. Please bring your flags, and please bring your friends and colleagues as well. On Sunday at 5 o'clock, Rabbi Brown, myself, Rabbi Bregman, and the other 5 rabbis from our trip will be doing a community Zoom conversation about our trip and to share our experiences, some of which we'll share tonight. More from our colleagues and probably from ourselves we will share on that Zoom call. So join us from the comfort of your own home at 5 o'clock for that conversation so that we can share those insights with you. Our men's club on Wednesday at 1 o'clock is doing a guided tour of the Vancouver Holocaust Education Center. They're going to examine artifacts, and they're going to tell, through those artifacts, poignant and unique stories of Jewish life during the Shoah. So join for that. On Thursday, the 21st, Jeff Balin, past president of our congregation, leads his Torah-inspired leadership group. This week, or this month, I should say, they're looking at Parshat Vayigash, and the theme will be the unexpected leader. And that's also via Zoom. And Wednesday, January 10th, that's in the next year. January 15th, that's the next year, so we won't worry about that just now. So those are the things that are going on. Please, I do hope that you'll come out on Sunday at 2 o'clock for the rally. Any announcements I missed? Anything? Okay. So Rabbi Brown and I are going to kind of split our talk tonight, and we've promised each other we're going to stick to about 7 or 8 minutes or so. So you can hold us to that, and we're going to go back and forth a little. I just wanted to open, without giving too much feedback, with the question of why did we go? And it maybe seem like an obvious question in some sense, in that with Israel in crisis, and our connection to the land and to the people, I think that Rabbi Brown and I, and many of you, have felt a need to be there, that we went as soon as we could. And in fact, in truth, I think that we were there a long time before we ever got there. There is a saying, Yehuda Amichai, who said that my heart is in the east while I am in the west, and we certainly have felt here in the west very much that our thoughts have been in the east. And so to be there was to be present. And we went to bear witness, to bear sacred witness. Now, witness is an important term in Judaism. We know it from the term adim, which is to be a witness. An aid is a witness you have on a ketubah that signs something. A witness in Jewish tradition largely has 3 components to it. You need to see it, you need to hear it, and you need to be present for it. To be fully witness to something, to see, be present, and to hear. And we needed to do all of those things. We needed to see what was going on in Israel, not through the lens and filter of social media, God forbid, or through news, whether written or on the screen, but to see it with our own eyes. And I can tell you that walking the streets and seeing what I saw a nation, and as I say this, I think I include Rabbi Brown's observations, of course, in this as well. I saw a nation that was different than I had ever seen before. Little things. I was walking down the street on the very hour or two that I had free, one on the last evening on Wednesday night, getting something to eat for dinner. And I could see people just sitting in cafes outside, and it looked fairly normal. And then you would look a little closer, and you could see somebody looking at the screen on their phone, and they were in tears. Now, it might be that they were crying over, the things that we all cry over, but I just had a sense that they were crying because they had read something about someone, because everybody there knows someone. It's not 6 degrees of separation. It may not even be 1 degree of separation. And you saw these little moments, these little vignettes of hugs, of a sense of knowing, a sense of understanding the pain of each other that just didn't escape you. And so to see that, to see the country mobilized, to see everybody, first of all, to see soldiers, particularly where we were down in the south, everywhere. It used to be when you would go to Israel and you would see soldiers, it would sort of a thing. I mean, you might see a unit going through some kind of educational thing or on some kind of maneuver. But we saw soldiers everywhere, in the gas stations, on the streets. And they were not in their usual sort of casual self. But these were soldiers that either come back from the front or were going to. And there was a seriousness in their eyes and their intention that was palpable. And to hear. We heard, when we toured Kibbutz Be'eri, we heard the outgoing rounds of mortar fire and of artillery fire from the Israeli side. We heard the helicopters and the jet planes, and we heard the machine gun fire from those as well. We did not, at the time that we were there, actually experience any of the red alerts, any of the sirens. There were a few, but not in the places that we were at the time. But everybody was listening for them. Everybody has an app on their phone, waiting to hear if they have and hear that tone. You see the signs about the shelters wherever you go, and you know that this is a country on edge, in a different place and space than we are here. And to just be physically present, to be in that environment, to be in that atmosphere, a country fully mobilized, a country that is fully intent on the task and the purpose, and I'll talk about it later because there are multiple tasks and purposes, and they are at times in conflict with each other. The defeat of Hamas, the rescue of the hostages, the restoring of some sense of normalcy, the ability to return to the places and the spaces in the north and the south where Israel had a flourishing life, a different type of life than the city life. And to see that displacement, which Rabbi Brown's going to talk about in just a moment, that was what it meant to bear witness. We went to bring with as well as to bring back. As you might have seen in the pictures that we posted, we brought 21 bags of gear with us. We were told before we left that they needed warm weather gear because the weather is starting to change. And so we brought what Canadians can bring. We brought toques and gloves and long underwear and wool socks. And Rabbi Bregman miraculously managed to find these particular goggles that the military needs. And it's not that the military is ill-prepared or unequipped, but the soldiers who on Miluim or on reserve duty, they left their homes and went off to their units, and they don't get the top-of-the-line gear, and they didn't necessarily know where they were going to be stationed, and so they didn't necessarily bring the warm underwear, the warm socks, and those kinds of things, and they're in post, and they can't leave to go back and get them or to go shopping to get them. And so we delivered. We delivered it there, and we actually saw today, somebody sent us a video of one of the units that was outfitted in the stuff we had bought at MEC, or you had bought at MEC, and it was there, and it was providing the comfort that they needed. So we went to bring there, and we went to bring back. And what we bring back is the stories that we will tell you tonight. What we brought back are the stories that we've shared in the media, and will continue to do so. And what we brought back, I think, is the heart and soul of Israel and of the Jewish people in this moment. And so I want to give Rabbi Brown a chance to share some of her reflections and observations, and I'm going to come back and share mine again.
Thank you, Rabbi Dan. Shabbat Shalom again, everyone. So I'm going to share kind of two perspectives or two encounters that I had that have really left me thinking quite a lot. And the first is about the Dan Panorama Hotel in Tel Aviv. So this is where we stayed our second night. Our first night we were in Jerusalem. And the first 15 minutes that we spent at that hotel in Tel Aviv was by far the most unexpected part of the trip for me. We pulled up, it was probably around 6 o'clock, right in front of the hotel, and there were dozens and dozens of preteens and teens kind of swarming outside the hotel. And the rabbis, we all got off our minibus, and actually one kid actually started to climb into our minibus. There were kids, we walked into the hotel, there were kids on scooters riding through the halls. There were dogs barking. Parents were kind of wandering through the lobby, looking utterly exhausted. I was totally unprepared to encounter, this is an important Israeli Hebrew word, the balagan, the chaos of what I was seeing. These were, of course, the displaced families. There are, as you might know, approximately 200,000 Israelis who are not living at home right now from either the areas around the Gaza border or in the north. Most of these families have only one small hotel room for their family. And we were told that at the Dan Panorama, where we were staying, there were 433 displaced families living there. It was over 1,000 people. Most of them are from Sderot or Kiryat Shmona. These are cities in the periphery where people have long lived with intense stress from security threats as well as high levels of poverty. Later that night, we came back to the hotel, and I was actually a little bit nervous that it was going to be really loud and that I wouldn't be able to sleep. It wasn't at all, actually. I still had trouble sleeping, but I'll blame that for jet lag. But as I was walking down the hallway to get to my room, what I heard behind almost every single door was a very familiar sound. It was a sound of parents pleading to their children to go to sleep. The next night, we were at the hotel before our flight left from Ben Gurion, and a few of us went to the lower level of the hotel just outside of the dining hall to hand out a few of the remaining Hanukkah cards that we had brought with us. We brought big stacks of cards that our students from the different shuls and the schools had made. It was actually one of my favorite things we did on the trip. We also handed out cards to soldiers, and it was really very sweet. So that night in the lower floor of the Dan Panorama, we had these incredible conversations with people. Lots of rambunctious kids jumping off the furniture and then coming to look at our other cards, and with the families. And first I thought, it's a little bit awkward. These people seem so tired. Do they really want to talk to me? They just want to get to bed. But when they read the cards, they were so excited. They were so touched that this community from Vancouver, Canada, had decided to come and send Hanukkah greetings and love. They had so many questions about Canada and about our life here. It was such a beautiful point of connection. At the very end of the night, we had still some cards left before we had to leave, so we thought, let's just go put them in the lobby. Every hotel in Israel on Hanukkah has tables full of Chanukiot where people can just go and light because they don't necessarily have their own menorah from home. So we went and we were going to put them on the table, and there were a few families standing around, so we said, would you like a card? And they said, we're just about to light. Why don't you come with us? So we stood with them and we did the blessings. It was very, very sweet. And it was also a moment that was really indicative of kind of this transient nature of all of these displaced families right now. Many of them, including most of the adults, were in pajamas. But the thing that was amazing to me is I looked at the Chanukiot that were full of light. Just past, there was actually a glass window. It was another room in the hotel that you could see straight into. And what did I see through the window? It was a boy sitting in a barber chair getting his hair cut. That wasn't always a barber shop there. There were things, many of these examples of how regular life in Israel has been transformed to deal with the needs of a community in times of war. A similar but much smaller group of people were hosted by our group of Vancouver rabbis for a Hanukkah party at another hotel in Tel Aviv, about 50 or so families. They were from Kiryat Shmona in the north, which is our Vancouver partnership region, which was a nice connection. And they also shared many of the challenges that they face in the uncertainty of when they'll be able to return home. And so I really learned so much from all of them. And I think it's so important to keep all of these families in our hearts, along with all of the people in Israel that need our support right now. So that was number one. Number two. So on the last, on our trip, one of the last additions that went into the itinerary was a stop at an exhibition called Nova 629. It was at the Tel Aviv Expo. It was a last-minute addition because it had only opened 6 days prior to when we went. The title of the exhibit, of course, marks the time that the terror began at the Nova Festival on October 7th. Inside this exhibit, the festival grounds have been recreated with the same bullet-riddled porta potties, burnt-out cars, and open tents. The photos of those killed are projected on a wall of remembrance. Every single item in the exhibition was brought from the festival grounds, where more than 350 civilians were murdered. Everything in there was so raw. As we walked through the exhibit, many people were crying. And there were many, many young people there. I wondered to myself as I passed them, were you there too? Near the end of our visit, I noticed a small crowd had gathered to watch a young woman who was being interviewed by a film crew. She was a survivor of the massacre and was giving testimony. I stood with the crowd and witnessed for about 10 minutes as she shared her testimony. It struck me as we were watching that we were witnessing this very interesting intersection of public and private trauma being played out right before our eyes. Here was a woman who had survived the worst nightmare one could imagine. As she spoke, she recalled detail by detail what happened to her that morning. Sometimes she actually took out her phone from her pocket and scrolled through her WhatsApp to recall the sequence of each moment. And though she was recalling this with obvious consent to be filmed and shared with others, it felt almost too intimate to listen in on this trauma. At the same time, I realized that for the few dozen surrounding in the crowd, the Israelis that were listening to her likely each had their own personal connection to the trauma of that festival. Perhaps they had been there. Surely others knew people who were, the survivors, the murdered, and the kidnapped. Even I, as a Jew from Vancouver, was connected to that web of tragedy, as all of us are, through the memory of Ben Mizrahi, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory, whose grave we visited the day before. All of Israel is enmeshed in trauma right now. You feel it when you see strangers on the street, when you make small talk at a cafe or a supermarket. In Israel, the personal trauma is national, and the national trauma is personal. But the resiliency of the Israeli people, which was so strongly felt everywhere we went, is in many ways, I think, the response to this trauma. In that overlap of public and private, we saw people holding each other up and also needing to be held. I've always found that Israelis are more open with their emotions than us North Americans. And that openness and willingness to talk, to be vulnerable, and at the same time to run and to help and contribute in any way, that, I think, is the source of the resiliency of the people that lifted and inspired me time and time again. At the very end of that exhibit, there's an area that showcases the artwork that the survivors have created as part of their therapy in the last 2 months. One of the walls holds a large, colorful poster with very, very large words that say, "We will dance again." May it be so.
I had two other observations, but I want to pick up on something that Rabbi Brown said. That exhibit was very, very difficult. There was another section not far from where that piece of art was, where they had put out items that had been collected from the killing field, from the place of the festival. And you look at it through one lens, and this is how I had prepared myself for this trip, and I want to thank Andrea Tuca, who's here. She's a psychologist and who deals in trauma with our Canadian Forces. You've heard her speak before, and she met with us before we went to help us prepare ourselves for what we were going to see. And I used very much of her teaching and prepared myself in the way that I prepared when we went to visit the concentration camps, that I was going to see things that I could not unsee and hear things that would stay with me and haunt me. And I remembered visiting the concentration camps and seeing artifacts, seeing the items, and you've seen this in pictures, if not in person, the shoes and the eyeglasses and the suitcases. And there on the tables were shoes and eyeglasses and phone cases and car keys. And they were there both as a memorial to all that had been left behind, and it was also a lost and found. Because people were coming, not while I was there, but I was told that they were, and they would take their phone case, their eyeglasses, because that's where it was. There's a room, we're told, in temple times that was the place of lost and found things, and if you lost something, you went there, and if you found something, you went there. And it was often a place where shidduchim were made, where connections were made that turned into relationships, because somebody that cared about your thing might be somebody that cares about you. And I can only imagine that these young people who were so full of life might meet up with each other again through the finding of their things. And also the pile of car keys. You don't leave your car keys anywhere unless you're not getting back in your car. And if you're at a music festival out in the middle of the desert, there's only really one reason why you can't get back in your car. And we saw a field filled with the cars that people didn't get back into, or who did and didn't get back out alive. And we saw this country take such care with those cars because those cars had been filled at some point with human beings, and now in some cases with human remains. And so they were draining the gasoline and the oil from the cars so they could bury the cars, because the cars themselves had human remains in them and needed to be buried according to Jewish law. That wasn't actually the observation I was going to share with you, but I'm going to share that. And I'll still keep to my 7 minutes, maybe 8, for Rabbi's prerogative. The thing I did want to share with you is this is a country in mourning. And if we know anything about mourning, we know that there are these 5 stages that Kubler-Ross talks about, the denial and anger and bargaining and depression and acceptance. And if we know anything about the process of mourning, we know that those are not linear. You don't go from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next. You go back and forth. You may never get to one for a very long time. You may go back to one again and again. And this country is going through that right now, and you can see it. And the realization that I had while I was there, as you continue to hear the international pressure for ceasefire, for an end of the campaign in particular way, for all sorts of artificial timelines that are being placed upon this country and this people, maybe with the best of intentions, I will assume with the best of intentions to preserve and to save life. And as rabbis and as people that work with those that are grieving, we know that you can't tell somebody, okay, it's time to stop being sad. You can't tell somebody it's time to stop bargaining, or it's time to stop being angry, or time to stop being in depression. That is going to take its natural course. And that's what's happening with this country. And so one of the things that I took back is for us to chill out a bit and to stop imposing our Western timeline removed from what's happening there upon those that are living it there. I wish I could share that in a much more broader context than you all, because I think you all know that. But my takeaway was that the world is not appreciating in its fullest extent the mourning that is currently going on, the trauma Rabbi Brown talked about that this country is going through. And the other thing that's about trauma and grieving is that what we have learned in our work with those that are bereaved is that when somebody is in the midst of mourning and sorrow, one of the best things that you can do for them, in addition to being present and listening, which is one of the reasons we came, is actually to give them something to do, to give them a way to mend, if not themselves, to mend and to heal others. And that's what this country is doing. We went to Achim L'Neshek, which is just one of the many, but maybe the largest of the volunteer organizations, many of which grew out of the anti-judicial reform movement. Volunteers, thousands of volunteers that are pulling together to make sure that diapers and food and dog food and warm clothing and toys for kids and all of those different things are gathered and then delivered to the people in the places that need them. This country is fully mobilized in the way that my grandparents told me about in World War II, about aluminum drives and my dad eating his last piece of bubble gum because they had to give the rest for rubber for the war effort. That is what's happening right now in Israel. It is incredible. It is the startup nation mobilized in a way that I couldn't even begin to imagine if I had not seen it for myself. And there is the sadness and the realization that the government is not doing this, that it wasn't able to do it in the first months, and it has not yet caught up. And in fact, we heard one of the volunteers tell us that the government came and hired them to do what would have been a government job. They came and they said, well, the volunteers said these families living in the hotels are not getting 3 meals a day, and they don't have a kitchen in their hotel room. And so the government said to this volunteer, are you prepared to feed them? And they said, no, we're not. We don't have the capacity to do it. You're the government. And in Israel, they work it out. But there is also a breakdown between this incredibly mobilized society and a bureaucracy and an infrastructure that has not caught up and has not kept up. The second, I guess now third thing I want to share is at Rabbi Brown's suggestion and at our need, we studied with, we did some study while we were there at the very end with Dr. Ruth Calderon, who was a Talmudic scholar, a doctor of Talmud. She was also a member of Knesset. I wrote on my blog, famous for having given a shtuch to the ultra-Orthodox in the Knesset at once when she was in the Knesset, teaching them some Talmud about how they had really bastardized the Talmud in their use and their extremist views. Made famous for that, infamous perhaps. But she said something, it was almost a throwaway line, and it really hit me. She said, because we said, what text are you studying with people right now? And she said, we're studying Hanukkah. And one would think, oh, because it's Hanukkah, you're studying Hanukkah. But she said, we're studying Hanukkah because that's actually the tension that we live in right now in Israel. And what is the tension of Hanukkah? The tension of the Hanukkah is the tension between the Maccabees and the Mishnah, between the Bible and the Talmud. Because in the Bible, in the Maccabees, it is about fighting, it is about power, it's about vengeance. They fought back. And that's why the Maccabees are the emblem for the Israeli armed forces. That's why they are the calling card for Israel's right to fight and exist and to fight back. But Talmudic Judaism was different. The rabbis of the Talmud replaced, if you remember, the military celebrations of the Maccabees' victory with the miracle of the oil. And they downplayed the military and the power and the vengeance part. And they did it for a very wise reason, because they were not in power in the diaspora that they were in. And to celebrate military victories over other countries when you are a small minority in that country is to invite more attacks upon you. And so the rabbi said, Shah still, we're not going to play that up. We're going to play it down. We're going to be wise so that we can survive for another day. And so there is this tension that is happening in Israel right now, and it's between left and right, if there is a left still in Israel, but it's between just two different schools of thought. Do we fight with everything we have and no holds barred, and like the Maccabees? Do we hold back a little? Do we do this in a way that is maybe more wise and more timid and more tempered so that we can survive? It plays out in the question over the hostages. Do we reduce some of the fighting so that we maybe, and we're talking about dealing and negotiating with terrorists, create an opportunity to get yet more hostages out? Or is the way that you get the hostages out, by continuing the military campaign? And there's not an answer to that I can provide, but I can tell you that there is a struggle that is going on. And it happens about the Palestinian existence and coexistence in a shared society. We heard time and again from those that were working with Palestinians before October 6th, who had worked in ways to try to create a shared society, that neither the Palestinians they had worked with nor they, the Israelis, felt like they could talk to each other anymore. And how you navigate that, and if you can, and whether it's Maccabees or Mishnah that gets you through that. So I guess the last thing that I will say, and then to let Rabbi Brown close, is that tension between what is the right way to do this is a luxury that we can have here, but it's actually not a luxury that they have there. Because while we are having these intellectual debates, the war is going on, and their soldiers are going off to battle, and people in Gaza are dying. And you can sit back, as the rabbis did hundreds of years later, and think, oh, this will be a better way for the next 1,000 years for us to do it. But you can also realize that in the moment of the Maccabees, they didn't have the luxury of time. They were fighting for their very existence. And that is also the pressure that Israel feels and is under today. They cannot return to their homes in the south. They cannot return to their homes in the north. They cannot for a moment take their eyes off of that fence, because they know that the enemy that Hamas has said they will come through it again and again. They cannot forget what happened at Nova, and they can't dance again until they know that Nova won't happen again.
So I want to close with a poem that I read this afternoon, and it really touched me deeply, both bringing in some imagery from this week's Torah portion, but also thinking about the many ways in which all of the people, all of the Israeli people, all of the Jewish people around the world, including so many of you, have come together to take care of one another. This poem is called A Coat of Many Colors, and the author is Racheli Mashkovitz. My son returned from battle, his duffel bursting with things that I had not packed for him. Socks donated by a community in Argentina, a quilted blanket smelling like someone else's home, a blue towel from a family from the Moshav, tzitzit from Jerusalem, a fleece jacket gifted by a high-tech company, a scarf knitted by an elderly lady, undershirts purchased by a paybox group, a sheet that was given to him by a friend, gloves bought by teenage girls, a jacket from the closet of someone who came and requested to give. I spread out all of these garments and weave together a new coat of many colors. See, Yosef, your brothers were there for you. Shabbat Shalom. We'll continue as we conclude our service with Aleinu. I invite everyone to please turn to 586 as we rise together.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס עולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום השמות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת. אין עוד ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. A reading before Kaddish Yatom, before the mourner's Kaddish, page 594. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was a gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched. On this Shabbat, we recall those who died during this past week or these past 30 days, whose families are in the midst of Shiva and Shloshim. As I read the name of your loved one, if you could remain standing here or at home. Dr. Murray Atnikov, Becky Braver, Roberta Chochnov, Rabbi Dr. David Ellenson, Donald Bruce Jarrett, Joseph Lichtenstein, Joyce Silver, Vivian Silver. And those for whom the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the death of your loved one, is on this Shabbat, if you too could please rise and remain standing. Albert Ackerman, Anita Rosalie Albert, Jacob Aronson, Motel Babbins, Erwin Berkowitz, Lawrence Bertrand, Alex Billenkoff, Helen Brickman, Eva Brooks, Lillian Brown, Etty Brown, Ryan Coblin, Helen Coleman, Bob Crunk, Vernon DeWitt, Yerachmiel Freiberg, Harry Garfield, Harry Garfinkel, Sheldon Gibson, Rennie Glass, Beverly Golden, Samuel George Gordon, Jack Gordon, Marjorie Hamilton, Ethel Hansen, Paul Heller, Nessie Herman, Paula Hister, Saul Hoffman, Rutger Stanley Horst, Stanley Jackson, Dr. Sidney Kaplan, Max Karp, Mark Cohn, Leon Krieger, Craig Moss, Nancy Phyllis Muttinger, Alan Nichols, H. Peter Oberlander, Joel Pohl, David Rabinovich, Mo Roberts, Ronald Rootman, Bell Rikus, Alex Schwartz, Lou Skulko, Joseph Stern, Bessie Stern, David Unterman. If there's names that I've missed or mispronounced, if you've come to say Kaddish for any other reason, If you could rise and call their name out one by one as well, please. We rise as we stand beside those that have stood in mourning so they don't stand alone at this time, and turn to page 598. I invite those who wish to join the mourners in Kaddish Yatom, page 598. Yit Gadal v'yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah, B'yama Divrach Hirutei v'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayachon v'yomechon uv'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'yimaru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei omaya, Yit Barach v'yish tabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit roman v'yit naseh, v'yit adar v'yit aleh v'yit alal shemei kudisha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, damin ron be'alma v'yimaru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, huya asei shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'kol yoshvei tevel, v'yimaru Amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn comfort the bereaved among us, and we say together, Amen. Congregation will just remain standing for a moment as we conclude our service. We want to invite Mason to join Cantor Cohen down here for Kiddush and Motzi. We've got a Kabbalat Challah Shane, you made it, right? Shane made the challah. He's available for weddings and bar mitzvahs and whatever you want. There we go.
This is something I've said so many times. Wait, is this on? Oh, it's on.
We want to thank Elena and Shane for sponsoring our own egg afterwards as well.
Wait, just do the wine and the bread, everything.
Yep, everything.
ויחלוך השמיים והארץ וכוסבן וחלוכים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כבוד שמה מכל מלאכתו אשר ברך אלוהים לעשות ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנהי לנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו אהבת ואותנו קידשת בכוכבים ושבת קודש ואהבה וברצון הנהלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
It's grape juice. It's grape juice.
It's grape juice. It's grape juice.
Okay,
Don't worry.
cover the challah. Wow, look at that beautiful challah. Oh my God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem mi'haaretz. Amen. Just take a look.
I don't want to eat this.
Okay. It's beautiful. Beautiful.
We'll conclude our service with the singing of Hatikvah and then our closing song.
Kol od balevav penima Avesh Yehudi Omiya Ulfatei Mizrach Kadima Ain Letzion Sophia Od Lavda Tikvateinu Hatikva bat shnot alpayim liotam chofshi be'artzeinu eretz Zion Yerushalayim liotam chofshi be'artzeinu eretz Zion Yerushalayim Oseh shalom bimromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'imru Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.